Act 4 has a lot of great farming areas that typically people won't go to, which stinks, but they are nice. They're typically very dangerous, as well as being able to spawn souls, which can be incredibly dangerous if you don't have max gear. Both the City of the Damned and the River of the Flame outside of the Chaos Sanctuary actually can spawn with very high level monsters, including the River of Flame being max level, so area level 85. The River of Flame also has 2 super chests that spawn at the end of one of the lanes that has a dead end. So if you're actually looking to farm just the River of Flame all the way back to the stairs up, you can farm this area very effectively. And you'll see a lot of videos where people got their last pieces of their grail actually farming the River of Flame. Since they have very high resistances, people like physical damage, magic damage, and poison damage do very well here, but there are going to be poison immune monsters in the River of Flame itself, so just keep that in mind. The Chaos Sanctuary is a fantastic place. It was built to be the end game, so it's very challenging. You're going to encounter fire, lightning, and cold immune, as well as most monsters having very high poison resistance, decent physical resistance, and decent magic resistance. So being able to farm in here, you need to have a well-geared character or somebody who's specifically geared out, so not necessarily very powerful, but specifically geared out to handle this. I'm going to include a link to the video for seal popping and how you can farm this on a Blizzard sorceress, even though Lord Desace is always going to be immune to cold for you. So check that out if you want to see the easiest way to farm something like this. But realistically, the easiest to break immunities in the Chaos Sanctuary are actually the lightning immunes. So something like the Lightning Fury Javazon or Lightning Trapsin and Lightning Sorceress do amazing in this area. Being able to farm the Chaos Sanctuary on higher player count sounds like a really good idea, and it would help for Diablo itself. But considering the vast majority of monsters in here are actually spawning as part of a boss pack, that boss is always going to drop a magic item. So keep that in mind. Farming here on players 1 can be just as effective as farming on a higher player setting, but the minions around them won't drop as many items. Since this is max area level, the seal bosses are actually not max level, so they can't drop every item in the game, but other boss packs in here can. So keep that in mind. This is a great place to be farming for a lot of rare items as well as high runes. Act 5 is another place that has a lot of very specific and fantastic places to farm, so I'm going to typically lump together a couple of these because they're so good. Eldritch the Rectifier, Shenk the Overseer, and Pindleskin are probably the highest value targets that you can farm on somebody who is not teleport active. So just being able to run to the waypoint to Frigid Highlands to be able to kill Eldritch and Shenk, and then taking a town portal back, going through the red portal into Nihlathak's temple, and then killing Pindleskin is a very effective route. Pindleskin can drop every item in the game except for 3. That would be Arachnid Mesh, Azurath, as well as Tyraels, but they can drop every other item in the game. So being able to farm Pindleskin for very high value drops, as well as the fact that he'll always drop 2 items, is definitely very good. And this is a very effective route. Considering that Eldritch and Shenk are both immune to cold, even with the change in penetration, you actually need very high levels of cold mastery to be able to penetrate them. I would say that they are not available on something like a Blizzard sorceress, but every other damage type in the game can very easily farm these places. I cannot recommend Eldritch, Shenk, and Pindle enough, and if you're not currently farming these, really take a look at it. Put out as much magic find as you can because they're typically very weak monsters, and you can very quickly get through here. Drifter's Cavern is a place that is max area level. You can get every item in the game there. The monsters are typically like pretty spread out, as well as a very static map set up for it, and a sparkly chest. I don't personally farm in Drifter's Cavern, but it is a great place to go if you're on magic, physical, or poison damage, as well as being able to break some of these immunities with infinity and minus enemy res, opens it up for other characters as well. Nihlathak, who is probably the most dangerous key to farm if you're attempting to do Ubers or Uber service or trying to get early torches in the ladder. Nihlathak will often spawn as immune to one type of damage source, will often spawn as immune to cold, and all of the minions who are directly around him also spawn as immune to cold. Now, the benefit to farming Nihlathak, especially on a cold build, is that since all of his minions are immune to cold, casting something like a blizzard on top of him actually won't kill any of them. The reason why that's so important is because Nihlathak will absolutely wreck you with Corpse Explosion, and if you can avoid killing things around him, he can't use that spell. The benefit of Nihlathak is that he can drop the highest item levels in the game. So he can drop any item in the game, he drops Keys of Destruction, and then in addition to that, the charms that you drop from Nihlathak can actually be re-rolled as 45 life skillers. So him and Baal and Diablo are the only people you can actually re-roll charms from to be able to get these things. So getting a charm from Nihlathak and then remembering which one it was is incredibly valuable for people who are trying to like super gear out their endgame character. Keep in mind that it's incredibly dangerous down there. There's massive poison damage due to bugs, and a lot of the monsters around him are hard immune to a lot of different types of damages. So being able to farm him again on magic or physical or poison or long range cold damage is your best bet. And since getting to him requires you to travel through 2 maps, either incredibly high mobility with teleport on swap, or a sorceress character is highly recommended for this. Most notably, blowing him up with a meteor sorceress is probably the most efficient and effective, as he's the least often likely to become immune to fire. The Worldstone Keep is like, by and large, one of the best places to farm on any character, even if you don't have teleport. Each level has a collection of monsters that are immune to different sources, but typically spawn in incredibly high density with a lot of boss packs. And since it's a max area level, you can drop any item in the game, and especially when you spawn with flayers on one of the levels, so many of these minions spawn that killing them on high player count can net you a huge amount of high runes in a very short amount of time. To be able to farm in these areas, though, you need pretty high physical damage reduction, max resistance, or incredibly high mobility with teleport and faster hit recovery. So keep that in mind when you try to farm here. Every damage type finds an immunity in levels 1, 2, and 3, and even into the throne room. But characters that have infinity can break their primary immunities, and especially stuff like the Lightning Fury Amazon, magic builds, high damage physical builds, and even cold damage builds can typically find a really good pattern to farm here. Each level is different. You want to check out the different act levels that we have here on Maxroll so you can get an idea of what immunities are in each specific area. The benefit of farming Worldstone Keep is that you also get to go into the Throne of Destruction, and you also get to kill Baal. Now, obviously, Baal can drop every item in the game. He's monster level 99. The charms that he drops can be re-rolled for 45 life skillers. And the monsters that you kill on his way are also incredibly useful for leveling when you're hitting those like higher levels, level 90 plus. Keep in mind that the Throne of Destruction also spawns monster packs throughout the wings that are on the left and right and through the middle. So it's not just the throne room. You can actually farm additional monster packs in this area that will also have the ability to drop any item in the game. Baal is not inherently immune to any damage source itself, but he does have a decent amount of resistances, but on players 1 is typically killed very quickly. In addition to that, killing him on anything higher than players 3 really doesn't net you additional drops, so you don't really have to worry about that. He's a very high valuable target. It's just the amount of time investment that it takes to get to him. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is that since tokens of absolution are typically valued throughout the entirety of the ladder, farming Baal and getting his essence can very quickly get you set up with pulls, mals, and even up to Istrians, especially in the early game of the ladder. So if you create somebody who can very effectively farm Baal, you can kind of corner the market on at least this part of the token of absolution market. Since so many people are killing Indariel and Mephisto, those essences are basically worthless. For people who aren't quite powerful enough to farm in Hell, the nightmare versions of some of these areas are still incredibly good to farm. So I'll very quickly rattle those off. Nightmare Countess for mid-runes to be able to build lore and insight, and then even treachery and peace are a really good way of getting yourself into early game power for yourself and your mercenary. Nightmare, Indariel, and Mephisto can drop a good amount of very valuable set and unique items, as well as good jewelry, and even up into Geed's charms, but you won't be able to get a Shaco from doing this, so just keep that in mind. Nightmare, Chaos Sanctuary in Diablo isn't the best place to farm, but it's typically a good place to get experience if you're trying to do it solo, as well as dropping a good amount of items in the game. And then Nightmare, Eldritch, Shenk, Pindle, and also doing Baal runs is probably one of the best ways for you to get levels, get into Hell, and very quickly amass like a decent amount of mid-tier powerful items. The only thing that I would say is you really want to get out of Nightmare farming as fast as possible. But one place that you can always go back to that's very valuable is actually Nightmare Cows. Nightmare Cows are a low enough area level that the Grand Charms that drop from there are actually very likely to roll as skill charms. So this is one of the easiest way to get a lot of resistances, life, hit recovery, damage, and skillers when you aren't powerful enough to be farming in different areas. Since there's a reduced affix pool because they are lower level, you're just more likely to roll as a skiller, so these are also really highly valuable for re-rolling with the 3 perfect gem recipe from the Herodric Cube. People think that you just want to be using the highest level Grand Charms possible, but that actually dilutes the pool. So I would highly recommend farming Nightmare Cows if you feel like you are too weak or dying too easily to buff up your charm inventory. Other than that, get into hell as soon as you can. Farm the best areas on your build. Again, check your build guide here on Maxroll. We recommend the best places for you to farm as well as the best places for you to start off as. And this is considering a level 75 character with really basic gear. So keep that in mind. Look for the green check mark in your build post. Again, I hope that this helps and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.